All actors, of course, deserve to be compensated with a fair wage for their work, with some allowances made for any added value a given talent might bring to a project. But sometimes the gap between co-stars' salaries is so mind-bogglingly huge, it can raise a few eyebrows. So I am Gareth, this is What Culture, and here are 10 co-stars paid vastly different salaries for the same film. Number 10, Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels, Dumb and Dumber. Even accepting that Jim Carrey was categorically the star of Dumb and Dumber, Jeff Daniels not only shares near equal screen time with him throughout the zany 90s comedy, but was a decorated dramatic actor in his own right. With 2 Golden Globe nominations to his name and a bevy of memorable roles in hit movies in the decade leading up to Dumb and Dumber, it was reasonable to assume that Daniels was at least paid a decent rate befitting his status, even if not the megabucks salary of his co-star. Indeed, Carrey was paid an eye-watering $7 million, almost half the film's budget, to play Lloyd Christmas due to the prior success of Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Daniels, meanwhile, was offered a paltry $50,000 for the role of Harry Dunn. To be clear, that's 0.007% of Carrey's take-home pay. Was Carrey really worth 140 times more than Daniels? Well, New Line Cinema's brass actually didn't want to cast Daniels in the movie at all, feeling that he was better known for his dramatic work than comedy, and so intentionally lowballed him with the expectation that he wouldn't take it. And yet, Daniels was keen enough for the part, despite his agent trying to persuade him otherwise, that he accepted the lousy offer, and the rest is history. Number 9, Joaquin Phoenix and Bryce Dallas Howard, The Village. Many years ago, a budget breakdown of M. Night Shyamalan's The Village was leaked online, forensically detailing where all of its $71.7 million price tag went, including the salaries of its main cast members. Joaquin Phoenix, who plays male lead Lucius Hunt in the film, was paid $5 million, while Bryce Dallas Howard, who portrays female lead Ivy Walker, received just $150,000. Now, there's no mistaking the disparity in profile between the two at the time. Phoenix had a recent Oscar nomination for Gladiator, while The Village was Howard's first major movie role, before which her only significant claim to fame was being director Ron Howard's daughter. Even so, given that Howard's role is much meatier than Phoenix's and Ivy is very clearly the protagonist of the piece, all while Phoenix's Lucius spends a large portion of the story incapacitated, it is wild that she was paid roughly 33 times less than he was. Number 8, Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt, Passengers. Jennifer Lawrence has spoken vocally about Hollywood's gender pay gap, and how she's been paid less than her male co-stars in films like American Hustle and most recently Don't Look Up. However, things swung quite nicely in her favor for 2016's sci-fi romance Passengers, where she managed to negotiate a stonking $20 million payday, all while co-star Chris Pratt netted just $12 million, and that's a big quote-unquote just. It's a surprising chasm of pay given that Pratt's character Jim Preston is very clearly the protagonist of the story, while Lawrence's Aurora Lane is largely absent from the movie's opening half hour. Even accepting that Lawrence had 4 Oscar nominations and a win to her name at the time, and that presented major value for a film initially being touted as an awards contender, Pratt wasn't exactly a slouch himself, with leading roles in hit blockbusters such as the Lego Movie, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Jurassic World. Then again, with Lawrence also having all that Hunger Games clout behind her, she managed to rock both the prestige rep and box office sway, likely influencing her ability to get paid almost double what Pratt did. Now, what is your favourite J-Law performance to date? Was it her work in Passengers or something else? You let me know in the comment section down below. Number 7, Richard Pryor and Christopher Reeve, Superman 3. It's well known at this point that Christopher Reeve's $250,000 salary for Richard Donner's original Superman film was epically dwarfed by Marlon Brando's gigantic $3.7 million haul for briefly portraying Soup's father, Jor-El. But that wasn't the only time in the franchise that Reeve ended up getting the short end of the stick. By the time Superman 3 rolled around, you might assume that Reeve's salary had massively leapt up. And while he was paid $1 million for the sequel, a fair quadrupling of his salary in the first film, it still paled hugely in comparison to one of his co-stars. Legendary comedian Richard Pryor played the film's second major role of comic relief villain Gus Gorman, and due to his high profile at the time, he was able to lock down an incredible $5 million payday. Given that Reeve's total salary for all 4 Superman films is estimated to be around $8 million, Pryor did insanely well for himself here, especially as his presence in the film didn't bring the series as many new fans as producers hoped, with it grossing less than half of what Superman 2 did. Yikes. Number 6, Mark Walberg and Michelle Williams, All the Money in the World. For Ridley Scott's somewhat ironically titled biographical thriller All the Money in the World, Mark Walberg was paid an initial fee of $5 million, while Michelle Williams received just $625,000. Even accepting that Walberg is undeniably the bigger box office draw of the two, did he really deserve to be paid almost 10 times what Williams did when their roles weren't that different in size? Given that Williams had 4 Oscar nominations to her name at the time, her casting alone elevated the film's awards buzz significantly. Yet the matter got even more frustrating when the movie had to undergo emergency reshoots to replace Kevin Spacey with Christopher Plummer. For the extra work, Walberg received $1.5 million, while Williams was paid just $1,000. As sparked significant enough backlash online that Walberg made good by donating his entire reshoot salary to the Time's Up legal defense fund in Williams' name. All the same, if you somehow still needed proof that gender equality is far from a reality in Hollywood, then here it is. Cheers for watching this video today, folks. Hit that subscribe button down below for more What Culture stuff on your screen. Number 5, Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton, Batman. On paper, there's nothing remotely unexpected about the slight pay gap between Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson on Tim Burton's 1989 Batman. Keaton, a controversial casting choice at the time and better known for his comedy roles, netted $5 million to play the Caped Crusader, while the considerably bigger star Nicholson edged him out with $6 million. Except Nicholson was playing an incredibly shrewd game here, as he willingly took a pay cut from his usual fee of $10 million in exchange for profit participation on the film's box office and Joker merchandise sales. It's since been estimated that, per Batman's box office and merch success, Nicholson made as much as $90 million from the movie, an astronomical leap from what Keaton got. Then again, one can argue that the Joker is the real attraction of the movie, no shade to Keaton, and Nicholson's casting and performance certainly helped get a ton of butts in seats. Number 4, Dave Bautista and Zoe Saldana, Guardians of the Galaxy. Zoe Saldana got stiff so hard on the first Guardians of the Galaxy that it's enough to question the negotiating chops of her entire management team. Saldana was paid just $100,000 for portraying Gamora in the first film, and while we could compare her salary to lead Chris Pratt's $1.5 million, it's probably more reasonable to measure her compensation against the movie's other prominent live-action supporting role. Dave Bautista's Drax the Destroyer has a roughly equal-sized secondary role to Saldana, and yet Bautista was paid a far more generous $1.4 million, a whole 14 times what Saldana got. Hell, Saldana was even paid less than Karen Gillan and Lee Pace, who despite their smaller parts of Nebula and Ronan respectively, reportedly earned $140,000 and $175,000 each. Given that Saldana had numerous high-profile roles to her name by 2014, namely in J.J. Abrams' Star Trek movies and Avatar, while Bautista was a wrestler still breaking into Hollywood, it is baffling that their pay differed so drastically. Bizarre stuff. Number 3, Liv Tyler and Elijah Wood, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Elijah Wood is far from the most famous face in the Lord of the Rings franchise, but he is the face of the trilogy as Hobbit protagonist Frodo Baggins. All the same, for his part in the first film, The Fellowship of the Ring, Wood received a mere $250,000 of the blockbuster's $93 million budget, while numerous supporting roles were more richly compensated. Take Liv Tyler playing Arwen in the film, who received an apparent $2 million, 8 times what Elijah was paid, no matter that her role in Fellowship is a small fraction of Wood's. Sure, Tyler had many years of well-received art house and high-profile blockbuster roles to her name before production began, but Wood was hardly a slouch himself, having starred in the likes of The Ice Storm, Deep Impact and The Faculty in the lead-up to the Rings trilogy. Though Wood's salary was increased for the sequels, and he was later paid $1 million for his brief cameo in The Hobbit and Unexpected Journey. That's still a major lowball for an actor who basically carries the entire trilogy on his back, and all the way to Mordor. Number 2, Leonardo DiCaprio and Jonah Hill, The Wolf of Wall Street. While it's basically expected that Leonardo DiCaprio is going to get paid more than his co-stars, due to the sheer star magnetism he brings to any project, The pay gap between him and Jonah Hill on Martin Scorsese's The Wolf of Wall Street is straight up cuckoo bananas. DiCaprio was paid $10 million to play crooked stockbroker protagonist Jordan Belfort, but Hill, who plays the prominent part of Belfort's right-hand man Donnie, received just $60,000 in total. Hill himself revealed that he was given only the SAG minimum for his acting work on the project, which, given the movie's $100 million budget, surely couldn't help but sting. Even accepting that Hill was eager to work with Scorsese, given that he had an Oscar nomination to his name before the film started shooting, it is shocking that he wasn't able to negotiate himself a better fee. Much as DiCaprio brings immense value to any project he signs on for, Hill deserved more than a laughable 0.006% of what his co-star was paid. Number 1. Chris Hemsworth and Natalie Portman, Thor: Love and Thunder. In the first two Thor movies, Chris Hemsworth and Natalie Portman, who play the titular superhero and love interest Jane Foster respectively, were at least paid something close to the same ballpark figure. In the original Thor, Hemsworth netted $150,000, while Portman got $100,000, which, given the comparative size of their roles, doesn't seem hugely out of sorts, even accepting Portman's considerably higher profile as an actor. For Thor's sequel Thor: The Dark World, Hemsworth was paid $3 million, while Portman reportedly received less than $1 million. Not a great outcome for Portman given the size of her role in the sequel, but compared to the third go-around, it seems pretty generous, to be honest. After sitting out threequel Thor: Ragnarok, Portman returned for the fourth film, Thor: Love and Thunder, where she played a larger part as a superheroic version of Jane Foster, Mighty Thor. By this point, as one of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's few remaining mainstay characters post-Endgame, Hemsworth was able to command a huge $20 million salary. As for Portman though, she got just $1.2 million. Given that Portman's role in Thor 4 clearly gave her much more to do and required far more of her physically, for her to get just a fractional increase on her Thor 2 salary almost a decade later is rather absurd really, receiving barely 5% of what Hemsworth made, despite being one of the film's feature attractions, simply makes no sense at all. This brilliant Portman deserved to be paid, folks.